Hi, my name is Pastor Hal York, and welcome to Truth in the Trenches. Today we're going to be Proverbs chapter 7, verse 9. And we read this: "In the twilight, in the evening, in the middle of the night, and in the darkness." Now, by itself is a rather strange sounding verse, but obviously this verse has context. In verses 6 to 8, now we see the context. It's a subject we've discussed many times in our looking into Proverbs, sexual immorality. Chapters 5 to 7 basically are treating it exclusively and give us some very important insight into that particular sin. But in verse 6, it says, the writer of the proverb says, "He looked out the window of his house, and he saw a young man, naive, lacking sense, passing through the street near her corner, and he takes the way to her house, the house of the harlot." Now, verse 9 tells us when this takes place. That's the verse we just read. And I think as we look at verses 6 to 8, we just mentioned, and then add verse 9, we can see this young man is not just out walking his dog or out for a nice evening walk to relieve the stress of a busy day. He's on the hunt. He knows what he's looking for, and he knows where to find what he's looking for. He's naive as to how it's going to end. He thinks it's just one night, everybody else is doing it. But blinded by lust, he goes where he knows the opportunity to satisfy his lust will be on the street, calling out to him. And one writer said that temptation is not a kidnapper who drags you into his van kicking and screaming and takes you where you don't want to go. You climb in all on your own. You are a willing participant in your own kidnapping, in your own temptation. This young man is not being driven to this street, this corner, this house. He's walking there under his own strength, his own volition. He's there because he wants to be there. He's naive because he does not know, or maybe he's just foolish. He's been warned several times, but he doesn't believe the warnings associated with this particular sin. He's on a mission that will end up, as the end of this chapter says in verse 22, as an ox goes to the slaughter with an arrow piercing his heart, verse 23. But the writer of Proverbs takes a great deal of care to emphasize the time of day where he goes, the conditions that aid in the temptation. There's the darkness, the tonight, evening, the middle of the night, twilight. He is inviting temptation into his life, not only by walking down her street or by her house, but walking down there at night. If he'd walked down there after lunch, things may have turned out different. But what he's looking for isn't there at lunchtime, but only after dark. And he knows that. So he heads out on his journey at the first sign of darkness, twilight. It means he's eager. Verse 23 says, as a bird hastens to the snare. Before the night is over, what started out as twilight ends in just darkness. He does not know that it will cost him his life. Verse 23 says, I remember when I was growing up on the farm, I used to go out to play after supper and riding bikes and all kinds of things you can do on the farm. But I was told to hear my mom say, and I'm sure many of you have heard it as well, make sure you get home before dark. One author actually entitled his autobiography Home Before Dark because his dad always said that every time he went out after supper, make sure you're home before dark. And parents tell their children it's not because it's wrong to be out after dark, but because it can be dangerous. You can get lost, you can stumble over things you can't see and get hurt and so on. It's not always safe in the darkness. Crime is more prevalent, violence, sin, loves the darkness. There's an illusion of hiddenness and safety. You can't see faces. And that's why men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds are evil, Jesus says. So we know why our parents would say, be home before dark. But this young man we read about takes just the opposite approach. He was home until dark. What he wanted to do, where he wanted to go, only comes alive in the darkness. And please don't think I'm implying that it's wrong to go out at night. It isn't wrong. It's not wrong to ask ourselves when I go out at night, what am I looking for? It may be innocent, harmless, fun, relaxing, all good things. It isn't wrong to go out at night. But there are also dangers in the darkness. What's our motivation? Do we feel freer in the darkness than we do in the light? Is where we are going and what we are going to be engaging in inviting temptation into our lives? There's one final thought I'd like for us to see here, and I hope we can see the implications. Proverbs 30, verse 11 says, there's a generation who curses his father and does not bless his mother. And then Proverbs 20, verse 20 says, he who curses his father and mother, his lamp will go out in time of darkness. Actions have consequences. He who curses his father and mother, when they need the light the most, the light goes out. They won't know over what they're stumbling. Important choices they need to make in their life, wise choices, moral choices. The light goes out. Why? Because they cursed their father and mother. They mocked their father and mother. They turned their back. And at the very time you need wisdom, you need this hope, and you need strength, and you need guidance, the light goes out. Why? Because actions have consequences. The morals slide downward. The life starts to spin out of control. Loving darkness rather than light leads to bondage, slavery, and sin, addictions. We could go on and on and on. The Bible has a lot to say contrasting light and darkness, and we could say a lot more about it, but time won't permit us to do that right now. But what Proverbs is telling us to be careful, be wise. Do not invite temptation into your life. Make wise choices during the day and into the night. Walk in the light of God's word. When we go out at night, we can and must walk in the light as he is in the light. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light to my path. So guard your heart, for from it spring the issues of life, the delights of your life. Home before dark or home until dark? Which appeals to you the most? Something to think about. May this truth guide us and guard us in the trenches of life as we seek to live our lives for the glory of God and the good of others. May God bless.